Today on the Star Trek Critic, the first duty. Before we get into the show, let's get this out of everyone's system right now.
Say why.
Why?
Because it was his duty!
The plot, Wesley finally gets into some serious trouble. Most likely, they are also going to Earth for shore leave and crew rotations. Driving such a big starship to Earth just for one person would be a waste of taxpayer money. As usual, the camera follows an extra to the main character. Worf says I number 1, then complains that he has less than 5 lines, so minus the first point, and 1 point lost since Deanna also has less than 5 lines. The first baseman knows all about the cadets. Admiral Brand wants to talk dirty to Picard in his ready room. Jean-Luc performs Picard maneuver number 1. Then she gives the bad news. Beverly asks if the show is completed and Picard says no, we still have 2 more seasons left. 1 point lost since Admiral Brand should have told Beverly personally. Picard says Wesley is alive and well, but not his best friend. Shout out to the casting director for finding the perfect formidable Admiral Brand. These are most likely Hajar's parents. Sito's parents couldn't make it. Sadly, we don't get to see the ceremony. 1 point lost for considering canceling the graduation ceremony. For my high school graduation, there was a drunk driving fatality of a senior as well as a freshman self-termination, and we kept going. Jean-Luc whispers sweet nothings into Beverly's ear, then performs Picard maneuver number 2. Admiral Brand declines the help of the Enterprise, which means maybe she is trying to cover up something, so Picard says we're going to investigate anyway. Wesley shows off the new uniform they're going to use next year for Deep Space Nine. This is where you notice Starfleet Academy cadets have really cheap dorm rooms. Wesley orders Star Trek models from the Franklin Mint. So far 2 days have passed. Here comes Nicholas Locarno, and Wesley kicks a captain and commander out of his room. That is a big red flag. Picard is thinking, I never before realized how much Starfleet Academy looks like the orgy planet. Boothby is correct. That is a stupid place to read a book. Now comes a timeline error. The current year is 2368. If Picard graduated in 2327, at the age of 22, he would be 63 years old right now. What happened to an early retirement age in the utopian future? So minus 1 point. Picard and Boothby say hey. This running reference is a reminder he ran and won a marathon at the Academy. Boothby acknowledges his past existence, then says the first baseman hasn't been young enough to make one. Make one what? Now they have a lover's quarrel. Picard calls him a vicious old man. According to this reference, Boothby is 104 years old. Then he complains about that horrible thing Picard did in college. He says, you promised you would fly me back to Mars. I've been trying to get back for the past 400 years. And you just took off and left me here. And don't put any androids on my planet, they will make a mess of things. Locarno is a little dirtbag, telling his team how to lie to the investigation team. 1 point lost since Nova Squadron would have a cadre staff. Another point since this demonstration wouldn't be seen by anyone since Saturn is 3 planets away from Earth. Another point lost since there were no support vehicles following Nova Squadron. Another point lost since there is only 1 camera orbiting Saturn. 1 point lost since cadets would not be flying fighter jets. They will have to graduate before that happens. 1 point lost for Nova Squadron flying close formations. The Blue Angels and Thunderbirds train for years before they can do that. 1 point lost for Locarno saying Hajar's name wrong.
Cadet Albert's ship collided with Cadet Hazar's.
1 point lost for none of the Enterprise courses moving Wesley up in the Academy. He should have entered as a junior. Hajar screws up, Sito blames the third baseman. But why didn't the sensors show exactly what was outside the window? And Locarno just threw Josh under the bus, but threw himself under the bus as well. This procedure will prevent pregnancy. Earth isn't moving. 1 point lost. The camera again follows an extra to the actor. Geordi says the Academy has all the equipment to do the investigations. Picard says if you don't do this investigation too, you won't have 5 lines in this episode. Sito gets after Nick. Locarno starts to get super manipulative with them. What's really interesting, when this episode aired, the character of Nicholas Locarno was automatically copyrighted by the writer. So if this character was used in Voyager, the writers would get royalties for 7 years. So the producers created the character of Tom Paris instead, which means the creators of the utopian future are a bunch of cheap bastards, and you can never retire from Starfleet. Wesley is getting really cold feet. Locarno says you've been out there. That's why Wesley knows he is full of shit. Hajar explains why she didn't get pregnant. Commander Albert brings in Wesley's sweater, saying I know that little secret about you too. Why didn't Josh just buy a sweater in Calgary, the capital of America's 51st state? Poor Commander Albert. A child's death is one of the most traumatic things a parent can go through. He has no reason to apologize. 1 point lost since this is a scene with Wesley and Captain Picard walking towards each other. Wesley is ready to get ripped to shreds. A diamond slot formation is real. The Jaeger loop was created for this episode. Captain Satelk shows the image from the satellite with the incriminating evidence, and they are all thinking, why is there only one satellite watching this? Shouldn't there be tons of cameras and support ships following them? And where is the cadre staff in charge of Nova Squadron? Beverly mom-splains to her son. Wesley blames the left fielder. He is really starting to freak out. Why can you see Picard's breath but not Boothby's? -1 point. Boothby complains that when he saw the building, he thought he would be a sex extra on Justice. Then he rats out Locarno since the Nova Squadron wouldn't take him back to Mars either. Earth is moving sideways. 1 point lost since no one matched the position of the 5 ships with any type of formation maneuver. 1 point lost for the interlock opening during the flight. That would prevent a massive amount of tragic accidents. Geordi and Data should have both figured this out. Don't they study these things? Earth stopped moving again, -1 point. Wesley is thinking, oh look, the ships are in the same position that the satellite saw. No one will figure this out. Picard asks if he knows the left fielder. Personally, I think Locarno would have been expelled even if they pulled it off successfully. Wesley chooses not to answer. Picard is pissed, he says. Wesley, you just want this episode to prove to the Trekkies that you aren't always a goody two-shoes. Wesley says, well, you know what? I have the new uniform and it has cell phone pockets. I was on the last Starfighter with Meg Wiley, who was in the cage. And I was in an episode of The Big Bang Theory with William Shatner while you were on Life Force. With a naked vampire woman and a terrible version of Dune. That makes me the glue that holds this franchise together. Picard is so pissed he says he's going to rat out the whole bunch of them. The scene with Wesley and Picard again. -1 point. What kind of a checker game is that? In this scene, Locarno shows Wesley what he is really like. He is only using this episode as a screen test for Voyager and doesn't care what happens to anyone else. Wesley uses an updated version of his "I'm with Starfleet, we don't lie" speech. Locarno tells him to resign, which I think is what convinced Wesley he needs to speak up. And I really don't think he saw the team as more important than himself. Admiral Brand says this was a terrible tragedy. It was worse than the narrator using an AI-generated voice, and that really pisses her off. So they got a formal reprimand and lost their flight privileges. I think they got away with it. That was nothing. Beverly is falling asleep. These trial scenes are grueling. Wesley is convinced Picard is going to show the evidence to Admiral Brand and speaks up. Sito and Hajar are thinking, no more sex for Wesley. Locarno is thinking, I'm going to kill Wesley after this, and Albert is thinking, I'm going to kill Locarno. After his confession, Wesley is excused so he can go throw up. Ironically, in this scene, Wesley is sitting so they can't use the overhead image this time. Does anybody know who these statues are? Were they put there for the show or always there? Locarno was expelled, and Wesley had to stay a 5th year at Starfleet Academy, since his credits on the Enterprise never crossed over. Picard quotes Boothby. Wesley is thinking, wait a minute, is he trying to compare this to when he wouldn't take Boothby to Mars? They shake and walk away, and the overhead shot is finally correct. Walker Brandt got a job with horses at the age of 12, then did the Hollywood thing with 22 screen credits, including Dante's Peak and The Primevals. Shannon Phil will be back one more time. The late Ed Lauter had over 200 screen credits, including Dark Shadows, Automan, and The Office, right before mesothelioma sadly took him. Richard Fancy has 130 credits including Starman, Seinfeld, and he will be back on Voyager. Will Wheaton will be back 2 more times, and Robert Duncan McNeil will be back on Voyager for 7 years, so not a bad screen test for him here. The late Jacqueline Brooks was on Broadway and has 52 screen credits, including Miami Vice and Lou Grant. The late Ray Walston will be back on Voyager. He has 150 screen credits, including Popeye, Fast Times, and Silver Streak. He wasn't a fan of My Favorite Martian, but he kept millions of children entertained for decades, and that's always something to be proud of. The First Duty gets a score of 80. Be sure to leave comments below. Click that like button, the share button, and that subscribe button, and I will see you next week.